The bedroom door doesn't close to protect the bride. It closes to trap the sound. Outside, the singing gets louder. Not soft, not tender. Loud, deliberate. Because if she cries out, the house must be louder than her. And if you think the darkest part of a Roman wedding was one obscene object hidden in a shrine, it gets worse, much worse. The real ritual was not one statue. It was an entire system designed to make fear look holy. So here's the mystery we're going to unravel tonight. What actually happened after the torches faded, the guests stopped laughing, and a Roman girl crossed the threshold into her husband's house? Was it one buried ceremony, or something even more disturbing, an entire civilization teaching a bride that terror was duty? Because Rome gave the world roads, law, engineering, empire, it also built a wedding night that could feel like surrender dressed up as tradition. Picture her, not a legend, not a named heroine. A composite bride built from the evidence Rome left behind. 17, maybe 18. Hair divided into ritual braids, a flame-colored veil pulled low. Wool wound around her body, a belt tied in a knot her husband will untie later in the dark. She has spent the entire day being watched. Watched while the contracts were discussed. Watched while the omens were judged. Watched while hands were joined. Watched while people praised fertility, lineage, heirs, not happiness, heirs. That word matters. It always mattered. Because in elite Roman marriage, affection was optional. Legitimacy was not. And that changes the way the whole day feels. What looks ceremonial from a distance starts to feel mechanical up close. Each rite is doing something to her, separating her, relabeling her, moving her from one household to another while everyone smiles as if this transfer is natural. Would you call that celebration? Or processing? The procession begins at dusk. Torchlight, laughter, nervous applause. Then the songs start, and the songs are filthy. Not because Rome lacked poetry, because obscenity had a function. The crude jokes, the shouted sexual lines, the Fescennine verses they mocked, blessed and brutalized all at once. They turned the bride's private fear into public entertainment. Imagine walking through that corridor of sound while every lyric points toward the same destination. The bed, the room, the irreversible moment. She knows what is expected. What she doesn't know is how many people are going to help expectation overpower instinct. A mother walks beside her. That detail matters too, because Roman wedding ritual was full of women guiding other women into systems men benefited from. A mother dresses the daughter. A matron escorts the bride. Female attendants prepare the chamber. It creates a terrible emotional effect. If women are the ones guiding you in, resistance starts to feel impossible. The ritual doesn't just overpower the body, it outflanks the mind. What does a frightened person do when everyone around her acts normal? She doubts herself. That's the trick. That's always the trick. By the time the bride reaches the groom's house, the ceremony has already taught her 3 lessons. First, you are being observed. Second, your shame belongs to the crowd. Third, what scares you has already been named sacred. Then comes one of the most famous moments, the threshold. He lifts her over it. Modern retellings turn this into romance. Ancient writers make it stranger. Why carry her? Maybe to avoid a bad omen if she stumbled. Maybe to reenact the old story that a bride does not enter willingly. Maybe because the Romans wanted the house gods to believe she was taken, not eager. Stop and think about that. A good bride is expected to appear reluctant, modest, ashamed, resisting just enough to look pure, not enough to stop the marriage. Can you feel the psychological trap? If she looks calm, she risks seeming shameless. If she looks terrified, the ritual confirms she is behaving correctly. That is not a wedding custom. That is behavioral engineering. Inside the house, the atmosphere changes. The street noise fades. The light gets warmer. The walls get closer. Now the bride is in a space controlled by the husband's household, his fire, his doorway, his bed, his gods, his people. And this is where the internet usually rushes to a single shocking image, the phallic god Mutunus Tutunus. Yes, ancient sources mention him. Yes, later Christian writers describe brides sitting on or straddling his shameful lap before intercourse. But here's the first twist. Those descriptions come from hostile writers who wanted pagan Rome to look obscene. The ritual may have existed in some form, but the sensational version is far less certain than viral scripts pretend. That matters, because bad history loves one lurid object. Real history is more unsettling. Real history says even if the statue was symbolic, exaggerated, or interpreted through Christian disgust, the surrounding wedding system was already coercive enough to make the night terrifying without inventing extra props. So don't look away from the uncertainty, use it, because the uncertainty reveals the real story. Rome may not have needed one monstrous hidden act. It had something more efficient. It turned humiliation into custom and custom into memory. What do we know more securely? We know the bride was veiled, staged, and transferred. We know lewd songs followed her. We know a pronuba, a married matron, played a formal role, often guiding the couple, joining hands, escorting the bride, and symbolically managing the passage from girlhood to marriage. We know attendants could remain outside the bedchamber. We know songs and noise clustered around that final approach. We know the groom had to untie the famous Hercules knot from her belt. And we know the first night mattered because consummation mattered socially, sexually, and for the future legitimacy of children. But here's what we do not have good Roman evidence for. No solid proof of a physician performing official virginity exams for ordinary brides. No strong Roman evidence that the pronuba sat in the doorway all night watching intercourse. No reliable proof that Roman law required witnesses to observe consummation directly. And that is exactly where your competitor becomes vulnerable. It takes fragments, Christian polemic, Greek parallels, and later anxieties, then edits them into certainty. The irony, the truth is already dark enough. Now imagine the bride in the chamber itself. Oil light flickering, a couch prepared. Women who had been bustling around her all evening slowly withdrawing, maybe a pronuba nearby for part of the approach. Maybe songs outside, maybe laughter from the last of the guests. Maybe the humiliating awareness that everyone knows exactly what comes next. And now something brutal happens inside her mind, not inside the room. Inside her, the body sends one message, danger. The culture sends another, obey. The body says freeze. The culture says be modest. The body says run. The ritual says a good bride does not run. She blushes, lowers her eyes, and submits to transition. What happens when survival instinct collides with social conditioning? Usually, conditioning wins, not because fear disappears, because fear gets repackaged as virtue. That is why Roman wedding imagery keeps circling shame, tears, blushing, reluctance. Those are not random poetic flourishes. They are the approved emotional costume of a bride crossing from daughter to wife. And no, we should not flatten all Roman marriages into one nightmare. Some couples probably loved each other. Some first nights may have been gentle. Some households may have treated brides with care. But a retention-hardened documentary has to do something harder than clickbait. It has to separate possibility from structure. The structure is the story. The structure said this: your body now serves lineage. Your modesty must remain visible. Your reluctance is expected. Your fertility is everyone's business. And tonight, whether softly or violently, you become a wife. Now let's go deeper. Because the bedroom was only one chamber in a larger machine. The machine began long before sunset. It began in law, in household authority, in the Roman obsession with family continuity, in the fact that marriage created legitimate children, and legitimate children secured inheritance, memory, property, status, and political alliance. That pressure bears down on the groom too, but not equally. For him, the night tests masculinity. For her, it tests transformation. He is expected to perform. She is expected to endure. That asymmetry is everything. And the house keeps reminding both of them. Fire and water greet the bride at the threshold. Wall hangs from doorways. The pronuba embodies the ideal married woman, the model standing there in flesh, silently announcing what the bride must become. The belt tied around the bride is not just cloth, it is suspense made wearable. The famous knot associated with Hercules turns undressing into ritual and ritual into pressure. Every layer says the same thing. This body is entering a new order now. Look at how clever that system is. It doesn't rely on one command. It surrounds the bride with symbols until disobedience feels like sacrilege. A spear parts her hair in some accounts. Why a spear? Maybe memory of violent origins. Maybe domination mythologized as ancestry. Maybe Rome leaving a blade-shaped fingerprint on the very image of a bride. Pattern interrupt. This is not soft culture. This is hard power-wearing perfume. And then there is the groom's psychology, which most scripts flatten into villainy or confidence. But the ancient evidence suggests something more revealing. He too is being watched by his own world. Friends, family, Household expectations, jokes about virility, pressure to produce heirs, pressure not to appear weak, pressure not to fail on the first night. That does not make him a victim equal to the bride. It makes him an agent inside the same machine, pushed to prove manhood in a space where her fear becomes the stage for his success. Can you see why that makes tenderness harder? The room is loaded. He is not entering it as a private lover. He is entering it as a Roman husband with an audience just outside history's curtain. A late Greek rhetorical text Greek, not Roman, suggests something telling. Guests might gather outside the closed bedchamber, and proof of consummation might matter the next morning. Not direct viewing, not a public live performance, closed doors, outside pressure, morning proof. That detail matters because it exposes the psychology of the ancient wedding chamber across the Mediterranean world. The room could be physically closed and still socially crowded. Privacy, in the modern sense, barely existed. Even when no one was inside the bed with you, the household was still in it with you, listening, expecting, waiting for evidence. And that waiting changes behavior. It encourages haste in some men, dread in some women, performance in both. The groom may feel he must demonstrate potency. The bride may feel she must display the correct mixture of modesty and surrender. Nothing about that emotional equation produces safety. It produces theater under pressure. What happens to memory when a traumatic or deeply stressful event is wrapped in celebration? It blurs. Fragments stick. The chant outside the door. The smell of smoke and wool, a matron's hands adjusting the veil, a joke from the crowd that suddenly stops being funny. The tiny click of a latch. This is how ritual enters the nervous system through sensory overload, not just belief. And this is why the most addictive version of this story is not, look at this one disgusting thing. That's cheap. The real gut punch is realizing Rome engineered a whole emotional sequence, public noise, private dread, sacred symbolism, sexual expectation, social surveillance, identity change. The bride moves through all of it in a single night. Now zoom out again. Why would a civilization build wedding customs like this? Because weddings do more than unite individuals. They stabilize hierarchy. They reassure families. They regulate inheritance. They turn biology into legitimacy. In a world obsessed with lineage, the first night becomes politically charged, even when it happens in one dim room. That is why even uncertainty matters. Even when evidence is partial, the direction of the culture is clear. Roman wedding ritual did not protect a bride from the stakes of marriage. It dramatized those stakes around her body. Ask yourself one more uncomfortable question. If a culture teaches a girl from childhood that dread is normal, obedience is honorable, and silence is maturity, how often would she later call the experience violence? And how often would she call it simply life? Ask yourself this: if a door is shut, but an entire family is waiting for what happens behind it, is that private, or is it surveillance with wood in the middle? And remember, the bride is not just entering a room, she is entering a role. Daughter is ending, wife is beginning. In a single night, Roman ritual compresses identity, death, and sexual initiation into the same sequence. No wonder ancient writers keep returning to tears, blushes, thresholds, and torches. They are describing not merely a celebration, but a controlled psychological rupture. The songs outside serve another function. They keep the mood festive. They smooth over the violence of the transition. They give everyone a script. Laugh, clap, sing, tease, celebrate. Do anything except name the bride's fear directly, because once you name it, the whole ritual changes. It stops looking civilized. It starts looking predatory. That is why so many ancient wedding scenes glow with beauty on the surface. Veils, torches, garlands, perfume, wool, golden light. But underneath the decoration is something colder, the managed conversion of a girl's uncertainty into social order. And here is the section most viewers never forget: not the statue, not the torch, the silence after the noise. When the helpers leave, when the jokes stop, when the bride realizes the whole day has been moving toward one room, one bed, one duty, one moment after which she cannot return to being what she was that morning. That psychological moment is the true drop. History channels often rush it, they shouldn't. This is where the audience leans in, because every human being understands that split second before something irreversible. The body goes cold, time slows, sound narrows. You notice tiny details, The lamp smoke, the scratch of linen, the weight of jewelry against skin, because the mind is trying to delay the future by overseeing the present. Was she frightened of pain? Probably. Of bleeding? Possibly. Of failure? Absolutely. Of disappointing her family? Almost certainly. Of being judged immodest if she seemed too willing and judged disobedient if she resisted too much? Without question. That double bind is one of the cruelest parts of the Roman wedding. The bride must embody pure modesty, shame, reserve. But she must still complete the passage. She cannot be absent. She cannot be fully present. She must submit without seeming shameless and hesitate without stopping the act. Is that consent or choreography? Now, about the famous erased ritual. Here's the answer to our opening mystery. Rome may have had localized fertility rites involving phallic symbols and perhaps even a bridal encounter with mutunus tutunus. But the evidence is fragmentary, late, and filtered through enemies of paganism. What is far better attested is something broader and frankly more sinister. Roman wedding culture normalized fear, staged reluctance, sexual pressure, and social surveillance as part of becoming a wife. That is the reveal. That is the thing hidden in plain sight. The horror was not one bizarre object history forgot. The horror was a respectable system history romanticized. And once you see that, other details sharpen. The braided hair is no longer just pretty, it is ritual control. The veil is no longer just beautiful, it conceals blush and shame. The carrying over the threshold is no longer cute, it stages unwillingness. The dirty songs are no longer comic, they weaponize the crowd. The knot is no longer decorative, it builds suspense around access to the bride's body. Every symbol points one way, forward, toward consummation, toward reproductive legitimacy, toward the husband's household absorbing one more woman into its order. And the next morning, that's where aftermath becomes social fact. Maybe gifts, maybe congratulations, maybe glances nobody explains, maybe a subtle reading of sheets, demeanor, rumor, or proof in some communities. But regardless of the local custom, the bride wakes in a changed identity. The whole world around her behaves as though a boundary has been crossed and cannot be uncrossed. This is the part ancient sources rarely give us cleanly. They tell us what men thought marriage should produce. They tell us what ritual objects meant. They tell us what moralists mocked and what poets stylized. They almost never tell us what a 17-year-old bride whispered to herself when the door shut. And that silence is devastating, because silence does not mean peace. Sometimes silence is what survives when only one side had the power to write. So let's slow the camera. The torches outside burn lower. The songs thin out. Footsteps fade in the corridor. A city sleeps under empire. And in one Roman, a girl is learning the oldest lesson power teaches. People will call it tradition if it benefits them long enough. Would she later describe the night as sacred, painful, humiliating, routine? Did she compartmentalize it because every older woman around her had done the same? Did she decide that naming it would only deepen it? We don't know, and that ignorance should bother us. Because history becomes dangerous when all we inherit are the justifications of the powerful. Then the ritual survives, but the feeling disappears. The law survives, but the body vanishes. The poetry survives, but the fear evaporates. And once fear evaporates from the record, later generations mistake order for innocence. That is exactly why Rome remains so seductive. Columns, marble, military discipline, legal genius. It all looks impressive from a distance, but move closer and you find ordinary human domination tucked inside polished civilization. The same culture that engineered aqueducts also encoded shame into the passage from girlhood to marriage. The same world that prized virtue also demanded theatrical reluctance from brides. The same society that loved order often achieved it by deciding whose discomfort did not count. And that is where this story stops being about Rome alone. Because every age has its beautiful rituals. Every age has traditions people are scared to question because family, faith, status, or identity rests on them. Every age has moments where someone's private terror is disguised as normal. So when we ask what happened on a Roman wedding night, we are really asking a larger question. How often does a society hide power inside ceremony? How often does it perfume fear, decorate obedience, and call the result virtue? That is the modern parallel. Not that we are Rome, but we are never as far from Rome as we like to imagine. Now, let's land the plane. The viral version says Rome hid one forbidden wedding rite so shameful it vanished. The stronger version, The more honest version is harder to click and harder to forget. A Roman bride did not need one secret monstrous object to make the night terrifying. She had the procession, the crowd, the obscene songs, the staged reluctance, the transfer of households, the knot, the threshold, the expectations outside the door, the weight of lineage, and the knowledge that by morning everyone would treat the transformation as complete. That is a deeper horror, because systems outlive scandals. A single ritual can be smashed, a worldview can survive for centuries. If this episode changed the way you see ancient history, hit like, subscribe, and join the history in fact. We don't just retell the past here. We expose the pressure points, the hidden psychology, and the human cost buried beneath respectable stories. And before you go, answer this in the comments. Which is more disturbing to you, the possibility of one obscene forgotten rite, or the certainty of an entire culture making female fear part of the wedding itself? Because the darkest chapter of Rome may not be what happened in secret, it may be what happened in public, while everyone called it normal.